Welcome to Chef Table Talk. Today we'll be speaking with one and only Chef Andres from Chefpreneur, Part 1.
Okay.
All right, so we got cut off there by Zoom. I'm gonna have to take that up with the Zoom folks, but we were talking about eating around the dinner table and how a lot of these young people, but even some older people, we've lost sight of how that's been going away. We've been moving away from that because of this
Mhm.
busy world we live in, eating in front of the TV and not really sitting down with your loved ones to enjoy a meal.
Yeah. And I think just breaking bread, it's just there's so much fellowship in that. There's something that happens. There is a crazy stat, and I read it on an article a long time ago, and they've actually done studies that if you're eating with even just one other person, your body digests food better, over 75% better, which is kind of crazy, right? And
Yeah.
I think it's like some people are like, well, it's probably because you're talking when you're eating and things like that. I mean, however you want to say it, I think we're just meant to be in fellowship. And that's honestly, I think, a big part of why I love cooking is because it does bring people together. And like we were saying before we got kind of unfortunately Zoom cut off on us, we were talking about, yeah, that it's around that dinner table. It's like sometimes again, it's not just about what you're eating, of course, it's really about the aspect of fellowshipping, together. And I think that was a huge piece of it for me when I left my last job, which I was an executive chef of a hotel in San Diego to start my own business. I felt like it was just a job, and it wasn't like, now me as a chef, yes, I was able to walk out in the dining room more, and it's unlike, not like my cooks were doing that, but I would go out there and peruse tables and stuff, but it still felt very disconnected for me. And I won't get into the entire story, but like when I set out to start my own business, at first it was a catering company, and and it did not really that good. It was farmers markets I was doing, and I was cooking and making food there, and there was a lot of investment with that, with money wise, and then it turned into like trying to get catering, but and then I lost everything. We had lost our townhome that we were living in. We had to move in with my sister, with my wife and three kids at the time, and it was kind of a low point. But when I discovered as a private chef, I was cooking for someone full time at their house, a chef that, or a gentleman that used to own a hotel that I used to work at. So I became like his employee. And then that didn't last very long because he was moving, basically he was doing a big deal in Austin, Texas. And I was like, I'm not going to move to Texas. I'm going to stay here. But I was like, man, I really like cooking in this nice, mansion for his family. And that's kind of what triggered me to start to, be a personal chef and really start to do and say, I wonder if I could do this with our clients. And then as I really understood, starting out of a necessity of what I really liked to do, I think I liked it because it was so much more intimate, right? It was so much more intimate to be feeling like I'm not just seeing some ticket on a machine in a restaurant like order number 28 and just cooking food. Which don't get me wrong, I love cooking food, but it was for me, again, going back to my grandmother, it was more about the experience that I was able to be with people and just pour from my heart, just really serving them in that hospitality. And so as I started to really build my business, I guess you would say that way, I didn't really have anybody guiding me on that, didn't have anybody coaching me on that. And I really learned the school of hard knocks like really bad. But it got me to understand that this is really what I wanted to pursue. So, um, again, it's funny because it's like to this day, it's something that I think again the world is losing more. However, it's like so important, and it's not only a blessing, but I think it's just also increases our health with livelihood of just fellowshipping around a table with somebody. And like we said, we just ended Thanksgiving yesterday, and it's definitely usually a time that you're dining with people and you're fellowshipping. And again, you can't tell me that food isn't a big part of Thanksgiving, right?
Mhm.
And you're thankful, of course. It's the whole point of it is the thankfulness and the gratefulness that you have. Um, but it seems like with every big thing, right, food is involved, and dining together and fellowshipping has evolved. I mean, really, when you think about anything that we do, whether it's an anniversary dinner, a birthday dinner, whether it's again, Thanksgiving, Christmas, you name it, even 4th of July. It's like get the burgers on the grill, you know what I mean? Get the potato chips, get the potato salad. I mean, there's always food involved with different things. And when you were talking about earlier about like kind of a cultural background, I think it's also food and dining with each other is what breaks down a lot of cultural barriers
Yeah.
because there's no culture in the world that doesn't fellowship around food. It's just what you do, you
That's
know?
what Jesus did. He fellowshiped
Exactly,
on food.
exactly. Right. I mean, if you think about that, speaking of that, from a godly perspective, it's like the most important thing the night before the most important thing that happened, right? Which was the crucifixion of Jesus Christ. What did he do? He
Yeah.
had dinner with
Passover.
everybody, right? So I mean, it's clearly like it's just such a beautiful thing. And it's funny when I started my business, I remember literally I felt like the Holy Spirit showed me just serve people like you would serve Jesus, you
Mhm.
know, and how Jesus would serve you.
Yeah.
And as simple as that sounds, that's what I did. And so I carry that even in the personal, even in dinner with a chef, which is my private chef business today. We just want to serve people from the heart. We want to serve people as they would want to be served. Um, and yeah, so again, I just think that whole dining around the table, being with each other, loving on each other, um, it's just so important. And again, we need to keep it alive. And even if it's us personal chefs that are keeping it alive, we got to still keep it alive.
Yeah.
And I think people
Not,
really
not too
love
many
that.
of us. I mean, out here in the Florida area, I mean, there are some, but it's not as vast industry here as I see as in maybe some other places. But what I will say to you as I'm working in the early parts of starting my business is that I can agree with you as far as one of my first experiences um being hired in February, this past February, by a family that was visiting on vacation, and it was like a bittersweet experience because they had just lost
Mm,
a person, a family member. It was the sister of the person who hired me, and she wanted to celebrate her daughter's birthday. And their tradition, right? Because traditions bring us together, was to get together on vacation. And this time they chose Clearwater, Florida, and they found me and hired me. And it was for like a dinner with tacos. And so I made those most fancy tacos they could ever have with all these kinds of sauces. And then they wanted me to to make her recipe cake, and I was like, oh no. I was like, I wanted to do like something on my menu, but I'm like, okay, I'll do it. Even though, it was what she wanted. So I wanted to make her happy. But here's what was the thing. Like they could have canceled that trip because they just lost a family member. And instead the daughter was
mm,
like, no. My mom wanted to have a personal chef experience. So I was like their first personal chef experience. So the pressure was on. But I tell you, like, I felt like I wanted to be a blessing to this family because in that bittersweet moment of, you know, what are you experiencing? You're going through grief, right? You just
yeah,
lost somebody and
yeah,
you're still trying to be happy and enjoy this beach experience, right? Because they were in the beachfront and all that. And here I am trying to be happy with them to keep, their spirits up. And towards the end, I was just like, I don't know what their faith was or whatever, but I was like, can I pray for you? And they were really open to it. And they let me pray for them. And you know what? They
it's
was
awesome.
they were just so nice. And I enjoyed just watching them fellowship together, and
Yeah,
they were just such a nice family. And I felt like, see, this is why God chose me to go this route. And nothing is easy in life. Like we have a gifting, but it's you got to fight to get there,
yeah, it's
just
true.
like you had to fight to get there to launch your business. And not only that, like you have how many other businesses, right? You have the Chefpreneur program where you're helping people build their brand, coach them, motivate them. Because how many times did you have to deal with me where I was like, I don't know if I could do this? And, I threw it down
Yeah,
twice, because it's not easy, and I was fully
Not
functioning
easy, no.
myself, you know.
Yeah,
But with COVID and everything, that was another, I think, thing that will help propel this business because what did people miss? They miss getting together,
exactly.
right? And if it meant, okay, having to hire a personal chef to come to my house and wear a mask or whatever, like they were doing that. You
100%. Yeah.
what was your experience with that before we end? Because we're gonna have a part two to this. So I know you have another meeting.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, it's good that you brought that up with COVID. When that happened, I was in, San Diego, and what happened was it's like it shocked the whole world. So San Diego at the time when it happened was a lot of people were going to come in for the summer, so we had people flying in from even overseas, and so like a lot of cancelizations. There's about 3 months that we didn't cook for any client, for zero clients, which has never really happened, right? But what's weird is that year ended up being busier than the year before, even with 3 months of no clients. Because eventually, I mean, California was, very extreme on kind of shutting down. And so a lot of restaurants were just not able to, like, they went out of business. That's one part of it. The other part of it was they weren't able to function. But then eventually people were like, listen, I'm not going to miss my 50th anniversary party for some restaurant being shut down, or I'm not going to put it in some bubble tent in the parking lot, right? So they started reaching out to personal chefs like me, and my business really grew. Even in that year, towards the end of the year, we were slammed because we were, I wouldn't say the only option, but we were the only option for celebrating things that were really big moments that a lot of people would have maybe done in a restaurant or a private dining room, or but they just couldn't. So we started to see an increase in that in COVID. And, just to kind of transition before we hop off on part one, with Chefpreneur and helping chefs, I remember how it affected that too. There's a lot of chefs I talked to in 2019 that were, oh yeah, one day I'll do this business. I really want to do it, but not right now or not this year. And not even exaggerating, like literally 6, 7 months later, they're emailing me, they're reaching out to us in Chefpreneur like, man, I should have invested last year because now I just lost my job. The restaurant shut down I was working for, or I got laid off, and who knows when I'm going to be back. And I think that one thing to end on an inspirational note with this is that be aware of be aware of how there's opportunities everywhere, and have your eyes open. What I mean by that is, and this came to me. I sounded like some great philosopher, but I'm not going to take the credit because I really believe it's what God kind of told me. I was talking to a chef specifically. I won't mention his name, but it was a long time ago. It was 2020, and he's like, "Man, I really should have invested last year when I talked to you, and like, but I need this now because I just lost my job. I got laid off, and like, I want to do this already. You knew it, but I was kind of comfortable, and the rug slipped from under him. And I remember telling him, a lot of people would have said that, and don't get me wrong, there was new industries born from COVID. There was new things that, happened from that. But I told him, it's not that COVID created or made the opportunity of starting your own private personal chef business. It's not like it created that opportunity or even made it better. I believe that it allowed you to see the opportunity that has been there all along.
Yeah.
People sometimes sit there and they think, well, COVID is what gave me the opportunity. No, it wasn't. COVID is what gave you the ability to see the opportunity that you could have done last year in 2019, I told them, or 2018 or 2017. I mean, I started my business in 2012. There was no COVID, there was no nothing. I just was so over being in a hotel grind and not seeing my family. And so I left
Yeah.
and I went all in on a business. And so, we have to be aware of, like, almost, if you thought, and I think now that we've been, as weird as it sounds, been blessed going through a time like COVID, you should change your mindset and say, what if that happened again tomorrow? Am I making decisions today that would allow me to be able to not only weather it, that's part of it, But am I seeing opportunities that are there now that would reveal again itself to me? And so I think that's in a huge important piece. I'll leave a little suspense for part two because we are now stepping into possibly acquiring a farm
No.
and moving 3.5 hours south of Atlanta. And probably on the way, whenever you visit your family, you'll drive through literally the town that we'll be in. And we'd love for you to visit, but it's not there yet. It's a whole testimony of what God is doing. It's in Tifton. Have you ever heard of Tifton, Georgia?
No, but it sounds like you're getting closer to me.
Yeah, I am.
Because I'm
Yeah,
in
we are. We are.
Florida.
Yeah, we are. We'll be a
Nice.
couple hours from Tallahassee. So,
Oh,
uh,
nice.
but um, but it's like one of those things where it's like there are everybody's saying right now it's the worst time to buy a house, is this, is that,
Oh, it's the best time actually
but
for the buyer. And a farm would be great. I mean, what chef wouldn't like to have their own fresh
everything.
vegetables and,
Yeah.
animals and all that. So,
It's awesome. So yeah, we'll leave that part for part two. We'll maybe dive a little bit deeper into that. But yeah, I just yeah, I appreciate what you've brought up. I think it's really good to talk about these things, and it's sometimes for me feels so long ago. Some of these things of starting my business, and then talking about my grandma, and not that I forget these things, but you sometimes don't talk about these things every day until you're on a podcast.
yeah. And I think it's great for other aspiring chefs and chefs like me who are just starting off and those that have already been doing it for a while because why are we doing it, right?
Exactly,
And
exactly,
I would like to see more personal chefs join the industry because we can also be strategic partners with and for one another.
exactly. 100%,
Yeah.
100%.
All right. Well, this is a great time with my chef mentor and coach, Chef Andres, and hopefully we'll get to do part two very soon.
Yeah, let's do part two. We'll get it on the books, and then when we release it, it'll be a good part one, part two series. And thank you again, Chef Monica. I appreciate it, and love you very much. And it was my pleasure.
Thank you. Love you too.
All right, take
Enjoy
care.
the rest of your day.
You
Bye.
too. Bye bye.